gonna be anything.
Just put up, once you put at the top of it, the two bills that we would take common, HB
472 and 880.
Before we call the meeting to order, I want to address the members of the committee. From Judy Ken, she said it was the largest and prettiest flowers that she's ever seen, and appreciated it very much and brightened her day. So everybody, we wish Judy a speedy recovery. She's still in rehab, so we all wish her well. Okay, with that said, we'll call the Regulated Industries Committee to order, and we've got some bills we'll need to hear today, and we're going to start with House Bill 472 by Representative Richard Smith. Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'd like to echo what you just said about Judy. She's an outstanding woman. I had the pleasure of working with her for about a year and a half. Really, really nice. House Bill 472, or substitute for 472. We ran into a little glitch last time, as we didn't realize this, but it could impact the definition of a brew pub, and that was addressed in lines 16 through 19. But an eating establishment is one that they get at least 50% of their gross sales from prepared meals. So if we're going to sell through a distributor, then you've got to confiscate for that in this particular case. So what we, through the help of Sean Marie, she developed this language that however barrels of beer sold to licensed wholesale dealers is not factored into that part on the food section. The other part of the bill was to allow a brew pub to go from 5,000 barrels to 10,000, and of that 10,000 they could sell at least or not more than 5,000 barrels through a distributor.
Any questions from the committee? I think we got that perfect. We pretty well went over it last time. We'll accept that. We want to make sure we got it right so we didn't have to do it again.
I appreciate that.
Any questions?
Just so I'm sure that I'm clear on what you're saying. It's a total of 10,000 barrels.
Yes, there's a total of 10,000 barrels, and they can sell up to 5,000 through a distributor.
5,000 of the 10,000.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Thank you, sir.
Bill goes out with a do pass recommendation. Okay. House Bill 867 by Representative Peake is going to be put in a subcommittee. Representative Powell's subcommittee will be heard next Thursday. Some people would testify on that, so we're just going to acknowledge the fact that the bill is here, and then it will be heard in subcommittee next Thursday. Representative, our House Bill 538 has been deferred to be worked on, State Board of Locksmiths by Representative Geisinger. We're holding off on that one until next week. House Bill 880 by Representative Alan Powell. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Bring to you House Bill 880. 880 has been asked for as some changes that the Georgia Real Estate Commission has deemed necessary for them to continue to do the good job they do in regulating the licensed realtors and that part of our Practice Act. It's kind of simple, but it's very complicated to follow the changes that were made. If you'll go with me on starting on page 2, line 28, it defines that a relocation company is not an appraisal company. Section 2 defines what a relocation company is. Most of the language throughout the bill is about clarification on what felonies are and how they relate to other states. That basically a felony is a felony. Takes out the United States and the foreign venues as far as conviction, since foreigners aren't licensed anyway in this. On line 152, page 5. And you'll see in this bill that's divided. The first half of this bill deals with appraisers, and the second half of the bill is almost a mirror image. It deals with the real estate agents and brokers. So what I'm speaking of, you'll see this in duplication throughout the bill. But on line, 147 through 152, this clears up a problem that they have found a glitch in the law at the Real Estate Commission, that if there's an investigation completed and a hearing has been called to look at a licensee, right now that licensee, if that licensee wants to surrender that license, that stops the process. So the Real Estate Commission at that point can't do a revocation. So they wanted this changed, because what you've got is if a licensee of an appraiser, or later on in the bill a broker or a real estate agent, if they have surrendered their license, then they may come back at some point and that issue was never dealt with on whatever the infraction was. Page 7, line 224-25 clarifies that the nine specifications above that they would be eligible for disciplinary sanctions. Section 6 gives options to the sanction. It gives the Real Estate Commission another tool in their arsenal of dealing with not only appraisers but agents and brokers, so that they can issue letters of finding. These would be things that they could do on simple issues instead of doing sanctions and issuing citations. But this would be then the ability to issue a letter of findings, which would be those minor things that were no need to put them on their record or to say levy a fine or do anything else. On page 8, 253, this defines what letters of findings apply to. And Section 7 clarifies that the real estate agencies, real estate agents and brokers, that they're the ones who can make referrals. What we've had, or what they have found, is that there's a lot of unlicensed people out there that are making referrals to property management services and community associations, and they're being paid commissions. Well, they're not realtors. They haven't been licensed, and there's no control on them. This specifies that they do have to be licensed to be able to draw a commission for those type of actions. On page 9, section 9, on line 306, another glitch in the law, that right now to stand for the real estate broker's exam, you've got to be an active real estate agent for 2 consecutive years. And what they've found is that in this economy, they've had people that will drop their license to an inactive status, and it goes back and forth. But what they found is that those people that have done that, sometimes the math doesn't work out and they have to skip an extra year before they can stand for the real estate broker's exam. So what they have, the language that they wanted is that it says that if you stand for the exam for a real estate broker, that you've had to be an agent for 3 of the previous 5 years immediately preceding taking the examination. And then the rest of the bill, we're dealing with the same. On the second half, that was the broker section. It's just a mirror image. Appraisers in the first half of the bill, brokers and agents in the back end of the bill. As you get to section 11, this deals with the research, the Real Estate Education Research and Recovery Fund. This fund was set up back in the 70s so that that citizens who have received injury, a loss, due to the actions of a licensed realtor, that they can recover if they have been, once they have received a judgment from a court of jurisdiction then they find that that agent that cannot pay or has not got the resources or whatever, then that citizen then can apply to the real estate commission under a certain process. The current cap on that has been $15,000, and they have seen fit that they want to raise it to $25,000, with the cumulative total of only 3 different cases that they could recover to a cumulative total of $75,000. Quite frankly, I thought that was a good conservative figure, because there's not a lot of folks who have filed onto this, and they've asked for that because they thought that was fair to a lot of people. And remember, for those who don't know, that fund, which is set by law that must keep $1 million minimum in its balance fund, that money is raised by the licensed realtors of this state, real estate agents and brokers. $20 of their license fee goes into that pot. So the realtors themselves, we pay for that. And that is what, if I'm not missing anything, Mr. Chairman, defines letter of findings, and that's generally
all I
what
see
it
in
does.
here is-
That's the long version. That's the long version of this.
About all I see is disciplinary actions and sanctions and all that.
Right. On the
Pretty
disciplinary
tough.
actions and sanctions, the letter of findings is being added to
Okay.
as another tool in the real estate commission's arsenal for an agent who has done something but is so minor where no one has been harmed from it. And with that, I'll be glad to answer questions.
Okay.
We have the deputy commissioner of the Georgia Real Estate Commission here. We have the Georgia Real Estate, Georgia GAR here. So whatever I missed out, I am sure that they'll be able to clarify and answer questions.
Recognize Representative Jurgensen for that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, thank you for bringing this bill. I just have 2 quick questions. On page 3, lines 68 through 71, and I see what why the change was made, but in other testimony and other bills in years past, this issue has come up, specifically dealing with the definition of felony in other states, and it was brought to our attention. I'm going back, years ago, when I don't remember what bill it was, that some states have classifications, A, B, C, D, felonies, and etc., that don't necessarily correspond to Georgia and what we deem as a felony. So if you had a case, the way that I'm reading this is, if you had a case where in another state, I guess in line 70, in another state and deemed a felony under the laws of that state, what would happen if it was a felony in that state but it's not recognized as a felony in Georgia?
It would be deemed as a felony in this state, I do believe, and that's how we put it.
Is that what we want to do?
The licensee or applicants that were coming in, and they would say, well, this offense that we had in the other state, y'all don't have a felony, but if it was a felony, it's a felony. I mean, it was a blemish on their conduct.
And so that's the direction, that even though it's not a felony in Georgia,
If you look at their criminal investigative report, it shows it was serious enough in that state to be deemed a felony, that they treat it as a felony in this state.
okay. My second question is on page 8. Can you explain on line 270 why the addition of property management services and community association management services
What they
added
have
here?
found is they've been getting complaints that there are people out there who are not licensed realtors, real estate agents, or brokers that are doing business in the referral business to property homeowner associations, property community, property management services, community associations, and they're basically using this as a profession or business. They're not licensed, and they're drawing commissions.
All right, let me give a scenario, because what piqued my interest here was property management services, and that actually could be landscaping for a community, because that is listed as property management services in a lot of communities. And so if we pass this, my question would be, if a business has a business relationship with a landscape company, and they refer them, and they have an agreement that there's a percentage paid based on that referral, we would be making that illegal under this definition.
And I'm gonna let the deputy commissioner answer that for clarification for you before I absolutely botch it with my answer on that.
Why don't you come on up and clarify these? We certainly don't want to get all muddled here.
And as you're walking up, let me say I fully agree with the commission service type thing, but I think this might be a little more far-reaching because of, and in full disclosure, I have developed and built property, so I'm pretty familiar with landscape contracts for communities and running homeowners associations, things of that nature that are not governed by professional real estate services.
Right, and I would agree with you, Mr. Vice Chairman. That's a point well taken. I think the Real Estate Commission's position on this has always been all along that certain type of property management services where you're leasing and handling trust funds and rent monies and things are what would constitute brokerage activity in the definition of broker, and that those activities, if someone was referring someone for that type of activity, that would constitute brokerage activity as well, the referral. So I think you're right. I mean, we're not trying to certainly encompass any type of activity that wouldn't be a brokerage activity, and landscaping is a good example. And we don't in brokerage activity contemplate that now, but maybe there's a more artful way to state this to exclude that. I would agree with your meaning. Maybe that's an unintended consequence of the term. It might need further definition.
I think if we could perfect that language somehow to only deal with the actions of where brokers are defined elsewhere in this code, maybe that might clean it up.
Okay.
How much trouble, Montgomery, how much trouble would it be to
or define terms under Title 43, Chapter 40. And property management services is defined as the provision for valuable consideration to another, marketing, including referring prospective tenants, leasing, physical, administrative, or financial maintenance, and overall management of real property or supervision of the foregoing activities for another, pursuant to a property management agreement. So I think when you see the terms there, that's what it means.
That's a problem then, because it talks about the physical management of a piece of property.
Well, I think the physical management might be included sometime if you're doing an overall property management agreement for an owner. That might be part of what you as a broker managing, it could be in there. But someone who's doing it not as a brokerage service, who's just coming in and doing landscaping, it would be different.
Well, you also have situations where organizations who are not brokers will be managing the administrative portion of managing a property, the physical operations of a property, which obviously a broker could contract that out, but could not.
Right.
I could see that being a very slippery slope.
Are we in a position to amend this bill today, or do we need to perfect it and come back? How complicated would it be to clarify this?
Well, I think I would need some direction as to how y'all, to the extent that y'all feel that it needs clarification,
Okay.
how you would like to go about that. The way I read this is it says that it's essentially a person who's holding themselves out as a referral agent for the purposes of securing prospects for providing those services, not actually providing those services. So I think I would need direction as to what the clarification is that y'all feel is needed, and then
Can y'all get together and perfect this without come back next week and get it done?
Well, as a definition, from what I'm understanding, it's only deals with physical aspects of
Well, that's, I think council makes a very good point there of saying that a referral agent, and again, trying to come up with a practical situation where that, you know, where that might be a problem. If you have an individual that refers another individual for that physical maintenance of work, they would fall under this definition, and it may be in a community that that individual has or that company might have an expertise in dealing with some aspect that's needed, and if that individual will be breaking the law if this were passed by referring that individual, that second company out. And I just think there's a slippery slope there, because I know what the intent is, and I agree with the intent. It's just a matter of wordsmithing it so that you're excluding folks that would not fall under typical broker applications.
Doesn't allow if they're proclaiming themselves to be a referral agent and not just the fact that they've made a referral. There is a distinction there, isn't there?
Well, I think that in certain circumstances why wouldn't you want people to be a referral agent? They're not providing broker services. I mean, that's not what they're doing when we're talking about landscaping companies or building maintenance or things of that nature. But because of that definition, it does fall under this.
I would be more than glad if this is the holdup. I would be more than glad if it's the will of the committee that we would strike section 7. And then move
Perfect it,
forward.
and then
Give us time to see what language could be perfected in there during the course of the way.
I think that's a good idea.
That would be with the regular committee.
Well, if we strike section 7 and pass it as amended, then possibly in rules to go back with a committee substitute would be the simplest thing, with Sean Marie working out the little preferred language that is needed. Probably the simplest way to do it, rather reconvene. Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from the committee? Anyone in the audience that desire to speak on this issue? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Let's see. We've got an amendment by striking section 7. Do I hear a motion to do that?
You want to just strike the language that's in section 7 and leave the section itself?
I think the way it should read would be to strike from lines 266
Okay.
to line 272.
And renumber accordingly.
Renumber accordingly.
Okay.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Here a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Amendment adopted. Now, I entertain a motion for House Bill 880 as amended.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Bill goes out, due passed as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is Miss Brewer still in the audience? Karen Brewer? She left. Bremer, I'm sorry. I apologize for that, because she wanted to speak on a bill that's in committee, I think, going to be in subcommittee. But I wanted to have an opportunity anyway. I'll apologize to her when I see her. Any further business to come before the Regulated Industry Committee? If not, I declare this meeting adjourned.